I'm Catherine Green, 34, and last Sunday my mother gave me an ultimatum at our family dinner: sign over your grandmother's house to your sister or I'll have you arrested for elder abuse. I just laughed. Little did she know, I'd been recording our conversations for months, documenting their scheme to manipulate Grandma's will. Now, as I sit in my lawyer's office with evidence that could tear our family apart, I wonder if blood really is thicker than water. Before I dive into how my own mother and sister tried to steal my inheritance and destroy my life, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy family revenge drama stories like this one, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life tales of justice served. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this family betrayal unraveled in the most unexpected way. My grandmother, Eleanor Green, was the matriarch of our family, a strong-willed woman who built a successful real estate business from nothing after my grandfather died young. She raised my mother alone while managing properties throughout Boston, eventually amassing a small fortune and a portfolio of valuable homes. The crown jewel was her Victorian mansion in Beacon Hill, a historic property worth well over $3 million today. Growing up, I was always closest to Grandma Eleanor. While my younger sister Melissa was the social butterfly who preferred shopping with Mom, I would spend weekends helping Grandma with her accounting books and property management. She taught me everything about real estate, financial independence, and standing up for myself. Catherine, she would say, never let anyone, not even family, dictate your worth. When I graduated from college with a business degree, Grandma offered me a position in her company. Over the next decade, we worked side by side, modernizing her business and increasing the property value significantly. Meanwhile, my sister pursued a career in fashion, moving to New York and rarely visiting home except for holidays. My mother, Elizabeth, spent most of her time traveling with her second husband, Richard, seemingly uninterested in the family business. As Grandma entered her 80s, her health began to deteriorate. She was diagnosed with early-stage dementia 3 years ago, and I immediately stepped up to help with her care. I moved into the carriage house on her property to be closer, hired professional caregivers, and made sure she had the best medical attention. Despite her declining memory, Grandma was adamant about remaining in her home rather than moving to an assisted living facility. "This house holds my entire life," she told me during a moment of clarity. "Promise me you'll keep it in the family, Catherine." I promised her I would, never imagining the storm that was brewing within our family. Last year, Grandma updated her will. She had always been transparent about her intentions. The business would be split equally between my mother and me, while the Beacon Hill house would go to me, with financial provisions for my sister. This arrangement made logical sense. I had been involved in the business for years and had already dedicated myself to caring for both Grandma and the property. The change in my mother and sister's behavior was subtle at first. Mom started visiting more frequently, often bringing Melissa along. They would take Grandma out for lunches without inviting me or schedule doctor appointments without informing me. I found it odd but assumed they were finally taking an interest in Grandma's care, which I welcomed. Then I began noticing strange financial transactions. Small withdrawals from Grandma's accounts that she couldn't explain. New credit cards I hadn't helped her apply for. When I gently questioned these discrepancies, Mom brushed them off, claiming they were for special treatments or surprise gifts for Grandma. The first real red flag came when I discovered a business card for a different estate attorney in Grandma's purse, not the family lawyer we had used for decades. When I asked Grandma about it, she seemed confused and said, "Elizabeth thinks I should update some papers." I don't know why. Everything is already settled. That evening, I called our longtime family attorney, Jonathan Winters, who confirmed my suspicions. "Your mother requested copies of all your grandmother's legal documents last month," he said. "I assumed you knew. She mentioned something about a review for tax purposes." Alarm bells rang in my head. I decided to be more vigilant, but I didn't want to accuse my family without proof. So I installed a small recording device in Grandma's sitting room, the place where she and Mom would have their private chats while I was supposedly running errands. I know it sounds extreme, but something in my gut told me I needed to protect Grandma's interests. The recordings revealed conversations that made my blood run cold. "Mom, you know Catherine has too much control over your finances," my mother's voice said clearly on the recording. "She's isolating you from the rest of the family. We're worried about you." Grandma's confused response: "Catherine takes good care of me. She always has." "She's manipulating you," my sister's voice chimed in. "We've noticed money missing from your accounts. Large sums that she can't explain." This was a blatant lie. I kept meticulous records of every penny spent on Grandma's care, with receipts and documentation that Jonathan reviewed quarterly. The conversations grew more manipulative over time. They would visit when Grandma was tired or after she'd taken her medication, when her confusion was at its peak. They planted seeds of doubt about my intentions and suggested that I was stealing from her. Most horrifyingly, they began coaching her to sign new documents. "Just sign this, Mom. It's to protect your assets from Catherine," my mother said during one recorded session. "We're going to make sure you're taken care of properly." I consulted with Jonathan immediately, showing him the recordings. His face grew grave as he listened. "This appears to be elder abuse, but perpetrated by them, not you," he said. "They're attempting to manipulate your grandmother's estate plan through undue influence. We need to take action to protect her." We filed for an emergency guardianship hearing, but before it could take place, my mother made a preemptive strike. She filed a police report claiming I had been financially exploiting Grandma and isolating her from family. The accusation was devastating, even though I knew it was false. The situation reached its breaking point at last Sunday's family dinner, a tradition Grandma had always insisted upon, even as her health declined. The caregivers prepared her favorite meal, and despite the tension between us, Mom and Melissa arrived with fake smiles and kisses for Grandma. As we sat around the mahogany dining table that had witnessed 4 generations of family gatherings, I could feel the storm about to break. I had no idea just how ugly it was about to get, or that the ultimate betrayal was yet to come. The family dinner started pleasantly enough, with polite conversation about the weather and local news. Grandma sat at the head of the table, occasionally drifting in and out of the conversation but smiling contentedly at having her family together. Mom and Melissa exchanged glances throughout the appetizer course, and I could sense they were waiting for the right moment. It came when Grandma's evening caregiver, Lucia, stepped out to prepare her medication. "Mom," my mother said, turning to Grandma with an exaggerated look of concern, "we need to discuss something important about the house and your care." Grandma looked up, momentarily confused. "What about the house? Catherine takes care of everything." "That's exactly the problem," Melissa interjected, placing her hand over Grandma's. "Catherine has been making decisions without consulting any of us. We're worried about you." I set down my fork, my appetite vanishing. "That's not true. I consult with Grandma's doctors and with Jonathan about all major decisions, and I keep detailed records of everything." My mother's face hardened. "Records that only you have access to. Convenient, isn't it?" "You've never asked to see them," I countered. "And Jonathan reviews everything quarterly. You know this." Mom turned back to Grandma. "Mom, we think it would be best if you changed your will to put the house in Melissa's name. She's moving back to Boston next month and can take over your care." This was news to me. Melissa had never once mentioned moving back to Boston or wanting to care for Grandma. Grandma frowned, a flash of her old sharpness returning. "The house is going to Catherine. We decided that years ago." "You weren't thinking clearly," Mom pressed. "Catherine has been influencing you. She moved into the carriage house to keep an eye on you, and your assets." "I moved in because she asked me to," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. After her diagnosis. Convenient timing, Melissa muttered. Grandma looked increasingly distressed, and I wanted to end the conversation, but I also knew I needed to let it play out. My phone was recording in my pocket, adding to the evidence I'd been gathering. We've spoken with the police, Mom continued, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. They're concerned about potential elder abuse. Financial exploitation. Grandma's eyes widened. Catherine would never. The evidence suggests otherwise, my mother interrupted. But we can make this all go away if you just sign the new will. Put the house in Melissa's name and we won't have to involve the authorities. And there it was, the ultimatum, laid bare at our family dinner table. I felt a strange calm wash over me as the pieces fell into place. This wasn't just opportunistic greed, this was a calculated plan they'd been working on for months. Are you threatening me? I asked quietly. Mom's eyes flashed. I'm protecting my mother from you. Sign over your claim to the house, or we'll proceed with charges. Elder abuse carries jail time, Catherine. Grandma looked between us, distress evident on her face. I don't understand. Why are you fighting? The house is mine to give. And you're giving it to Catherine because she's manipulated you, Melissa said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I took a deep breath and looked directly at my mother. Let me get this straight. You want me to sign away Grandma's house, the house she specifically wants me to have, or you'll have me arrested on false charges of elder abuse? They're not false charges if there's evidence, Mom replied coldly. And that's when I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of their scheme, laid out so blatantly, struck me as absurdly transparent. What's so funny? Melissa demanded. The fact that you two are committing the exact crime you're accusing me of, I said. Attempting to manipulate Grandma into changing her will through undue influence and emotional abuse. That's elder abuse, by definition. Mom's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. You have no proof of that. Actually, I do, I replied calmly. I've been recording your private conversations with Grandma for months. I have you on tape coaching her to sign documents, telling her lies about money missing from her accounts, and strategizing about how to cut me out of her will. The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa's mouth opened and closed without words. Mom's face contorted with rage. You can't record people without their consent, she finally sputtered. That's illegal. Not in Massachusetts, actually. We're a one-party consent state for recordings. And Grandma gave me permission to install security monitoring in her home after she started experiencing confusion. It's all documented with Jonathan. Grandma looked at my mother and sister with dawning comprehension. You were trying to trick me? To take the house from Catherine? Mom quickly backpedaled. We were protecting you, Mom. Catherine has been caring for me, Grandma interrupted, her voice suddenly strong and clear. While you've been traveling the world with Richard. While Melissa hasn't visited for months at a time. Lucia returned with Grandma's medication, sensing the tension in the room. Is everything all right, Ms. Eleanor? Grandma straightened in her chair. No, Lucia, it's not. Would you please call Jonathan Winters for me? Tell him I need to speak with him first thing tomorrow morning. Mom stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're not thinking clearly, Mom. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months, Grandma replied. And I want you both to leave my house. Now. The shock on their faces was almost comical. They'd never expected Grandma to stand up to them or for me to have evidence of their manipulation. As they gathered their things to leave, Mom turned to me with venom in her eyes. This isn't over, Catherine. Family doesn't do this to family. Exactly, I replied. Remember that the next time you try to have your daughter arrested for a crime she didn't commit. After they left, Grandma collapsed into tears. I held her hand as she processed the betrayal, her body shaking with sobs. "I never thought Elizabeth would do something like this," she whispered. "My own daughter." "I'm sorry, Grandma," I said. "I'm so sorry they put you through this." She squeezed my hand. "Don't be sorry. Be prepared. They won't stop here." She was right. What had begun as a family dinner confrontation was about to escalate into a full-blown legal battle that would test the limits of what it means to be family. The morning after the disastrous family dinner, I met with Jonathan Winters in his downtown office. I brought everything: USB drives containing months of recorded conversations, financial records showing every penny spent on Grandma's care, medical reports from her doctors, and statements from her caregivers. "This is quite comprehensive," Jonathan said, reviewing the materials. His office was a testament to his 40 years of practice, walls lined with law books, diplomas, and family photos. He'd been handling the Green family's legal affairs since before I was born. "I'm deeply disturbed by what I'm hearing in these recordings." I played him the most damning clips: my mother suggesting that I had been stealing from Grandma's accounts, Melissa coaching Grandma to sign papers when she was clearly confused, both of them telling Grandma that I was keeping her isolated when in reality, they rarely visited unless they wanted something. "The most concerning aspect is that they appeared to have consulted another attorney," Jonathan noted, frowning at the business card I'd found. "Gerald Hoffman. He has a reputation for being flexible with ethical considerations." "They threatened to have me arrested," I said, still in disbelief. "My own mother." Jonathan removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Unfortunately, false allegations of elder abuse are not uncommon in estate disputes. The good news is that you have substantial evidence contradicting their claims. What's our next step?" "First, we need to secure Eleanor's current situation. Given her diagnosis and these attempts to unduly influence her, I recommend we proceed with the guardianship petition immediately. With your grandmother's consent, of course." Grandma had been clear that morning: she wanted me as her guardian, with Jonathan serving as co-guardian to oversee financial matters. This arrangement would protect her from further manipulation while ensuring transparent oversight. "Second," Jonathan continued, "we need to address these false allegations head-on. I'll prepare a cease and desist letter regarding the defamatory statements, and we should file a police report documenting their attempt to coerce you under threat of false criminal charges." I hesitated. "A police report against my own mother and sister?" Jonathan's expression softened. "Catherine, I've known your family for decades. This is painful, I understand. But what they're doing isn't just morally wrong, it's potentially criminal. If they follow through with filing false reports against you, the consequences could be severe." He was right, but the thought of escalating this family conflict to involve law enforcement made my stomach churn. These were the people I'd grown up with, shared holidays with, trusted. Until now. "There's something else," I said, pulling out my phone to show him text messages I'd received that morning. "Melissa has started contacting Grandma's friends, telling them I'm preventing them from visiting and stealing her money." Jonathan's expression darkened as he scrolled through the screenshots forwarded by Grandma's bridge partner, Margaret. "Character assassination. They're trying to isolate your grandmother from her support network and turn people against you. It's already working. 2 of her friends called this morning, asking strange questions about her finances and my control over her life. We need to move quickly," Jonathan decided. "With your permission, I'd like to bring in a colleague who specializes in elder law and contested guardianships. This situation has escalated beyond a family disagreement." By afternoon, we had filed the emergency guardianship petition and sent formal letters to my mother, sister, and Gerald Hoffman, putting them on notice regarding their actions. I returned to Grandma's house feeling both empowered and hollowed out. Standing up to my family was the right thing to do, but it left a void where my relationship with them used to be. Grandma was sitting in her sunroom when I returned, looking through old photo albums. She glanced up as I entered, her eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. "Did Jonathan think the recordings will help?" she asked. "Yes. He said they provide clear evidence of their intentions." I sat beside her, noticing she was looking at photos from my childhood, family vacations, holiday gatherings, birthday parties. "Grandma, are you sure you want to go through with this? They're still your daughter and granddaughter." She touched a photo of my mother as a young woman, standing proudly in front of the Beacon Hill house when they first moved in. The Elizabeth I raised would never have done this. Something changed in her, Catherine. The money, perhaps. Or maybe it was always there, and I didn't want to see it. She turned the page to a photo of all of us at my high school graduation. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who stands by you when it matters. Who honors their promises. She squeezed my hand. "You've honored yours to me." That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Detective Michael Rivera from the Boston Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. "Ms. Green, we've received a report alleging financial exploitation of an elderly person. The complainant is your mother, Elizabeth Morrison. She claims you've misappropriated funds from Eleanor Green's accounts. I'd like to meet with you to discuss these allegations." Despite Jonathan's preparation, my heart still raced. "My attorney and I would be happy to meet with you, Detective. We have extensive documentation regarding my grandmother's care and finances." "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the station would work," he said, his tone professional but not accusatory. "We'll be there." "And Detective? You should know that we've filed a report this morning regarding attempts to unduly influence my grandmother and threats made against me." There was a pause. "I see. I'll review that report before our meeting." After hanging up, I called Jonathan to update him. His secretary put me through immediately. "They actually did it," I said, my voice shaking. "They filed a police report." "I was afraid they might," Jonathan replied. "But don't worry. The detective will review the evidence objectively. Truth is on our side." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from my childhood, searching for signs I might have missed. Had my mother always been capable of this level of betrayal? Had Melissa always resented me for being closer to Grandma? The house felt both like a sanctuary and a battleground, the physical manifestation of everything that was tearing our family apart. Around midnight, my phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. "You have no idea what you've started. Hope the house is worth losing your family over." I didn't need to ask who it was from. The war for Grandma's legacy had officially begun, and there would be no easy path to peace. Detective Rivera's office was spartanly furnished, just a metal desk, 3 chairs, and walls covered with community service awards and family photos. He greeted Jonathan and me with a firm handshake and a neutral expression that revealed nothing about his thoughts on the case. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Green, Mr. Winters. I've reviewed both reports filed, and I have to say, this is one of the more complex family situations I've encountered recently." I placed our binder of evidence on his desk. "We've prepared comprehensive documentation of my grandmother's care, finances, and the attempts to manipulate her." The detective raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such thoroughness. "Let's start with your side of the story, Ms. Green." For the next hour, I walked him through everything: my relationship with Grandma, the business we ran together, her diagnosis, and the sudden interest my mother and sister had taken in her estate. I played several of the recordings, watching his expression shift from professional detachment to concern as he heard my mother coaching Grandma to sign documents while clearly confused. "These recordings were made legally?" he asked. Jonathan nodded. "Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. Additionally, Ms. Catherine Green had permission to install security monitoring in her grandmother's home as part of her care plan after the dementia diagnosis. all documented here. He pointed to the relevant section in our binder. Detective Rivera reviewed the financial records next, the meticulous accounting of Grandma's expenses, regular reports to Jonathan, and bank statements showing no unexplained withdrawals except for the ones that had occurred during my mother's visits. "And you've identified these withdrawals as problematic?" he asked, pointing to several ATM transactions. "Yes. They were made using a debit card I didn't know existed, linked to an account I don't have access to. When I asked Grandma about them, she had no recollection of making the withdrawals or of having that card." Rivera made notes, his face giving nothing away. "Your mother claims you've isolated Eleanor from family and friends. That you control who she sees and speaks to." I handed him a visitor log kept by the caregiving agency. "Grandma has 3 regular caregivers who maintain this log of all visitors. As you can see, my mother visited 6 times in the past year, always when I was scheduled to be out of town for business. Melissa visited twice. Meanwhile, Grandma's bridge club comes weekly, her church friends visit regularly, and her doctors make house calls monthly." The detective spent several minutes reviewing the log, then looked up. "And the new attorney they consulted?" Jonathan answered this one. "Gerald Hoffman. We've included a formal ethics complaint we're filing with the Massachusetts Bar Association. He met with Eleanor without verifying her capacity to consent to new estate planning, despite her documented diagnosis." By the end of the interview, Detective Rivera's demeanor had softened slightly. "I appreciate the thoroughness of your documentation, Ms. Green. It's unusual in these cases. Will you be pursuing my mother's complaint?" I asked directly. "I'll be conducting a full investigation, which will include interviewing all parties and reviewing all evidence." He hesitated, then added, "Based on what I've seen today, I would advise you to continue documenting everything. Family disputes over estates can escalate in unexpected ways." As we left the police station, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. The detective had clearly taken our evidence seriously, but the fact remained that my own mother had tried to have me arrested. There was no coming back from that kind of betrayal. "You did well in there," Jonathan said as we walked to our cars. "Rivera is known for being thorough and fair. The evidence speaks for itself." "What happens now?" "We wait for the guardianship hearing next week. In the meantime, I suggest you stay at the house with Eleanor and maintain the visitor log. Don't engage with Elizabeth or Melissa if they contact you." That evening, I returned to find Grandma agitated. Lucia, her evening caregiver, met me at the door with a worried expression. "Ms. Elizabeth called 3 times today," she reported. "The last time, she told Ms. Eleanor that you were speaking with the police about putting her in a nursing home. Ms. Eleanor became very upset until I explained that wasn't true." My hands clenched into fists. "They're trying to turn her against me now." "There's more," Lucia said hesitantly. "A woman came by claiming to be from Elder Services. She asked many questions about Ms. Eleanor's care and wanted to speak with her alone. I followed protocol and asked for identification, which she couldn't provide. I refused to leave them alone, and eventually she left." My blood ran cold. "What did she look like?" "Young, stylish. Dark hair cut in a bob. Very expensive purse." "Melissa." "It had to be. She was trying to get to Grandma while I was out." I called Jonathan immediately, who advised me to report the incident to Detective Rivera and to consider hiring additional security. "This is escalating faster than I anticipated," he admitted. That night, as I sat with Grandma watching her favorite old movies, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were under siege in what should have been our safest place. Grandma must have sensed my unease. "You know," she said during a quiet moment, "when your grandfather died and left me with your mother to raise and a mountain of debt, everyone told me to sell this house. It was too big, too expensive, too much for a widow to maintain. She gestured around the sitting room with its ornate moldings and bay windows. But this house represented everything I wanted to build: security, beauty, legacy. I couldn't bear to let it go. She reached for my hand. The house isn't just walls and a roof, Catherine. It's what it represents. Independence. Perseverance. The future we build for ourselves despite obstacles. I squeezed her hand. I know, Grandma. That's why I'm fighting so hard to honor your wishes. The house matters, she said firmly. But you matter more. If this becomes too much, if they hurt you in their quest to take it, I would rather see it sold than watch you suffer. Tears welled in my eyes. I won't let them win, Grandma. Not like this. She nodded, her eyes drifting back to the movie. We green women don't surrender easily, do we? No, we don't, I thought. And that's exactly what my mother and sister were counting on, that I would fight back, that I would be drawn into an ugly public battle that would stress Grandma and potentially worsen her condition. I needed to step back and think strategically. This wasn't just about the house anymore, it was about protecting Grandma and exposing the truth of what my family was trying to do. As I sit here now, watching Grandma doze in her favorite chair, I'm struck by how quickly life can change. 3 months ago, I thought I understood my family. I thought blood meant loyalty, that shared history guaranteed at least basic decency. Now I'm installing security cameras and sleeping with my phone by my pillow, waiting for the next attack. I know many of you watching have experienced family betrayal, that moment when you realize the people who should love you the most are capable of hurting you deeply. If you've been through something similar, drop a comment below about how you handled it. Did you fight back or walk away? And if you're finding this story helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories of family drama and personal resilience. I'll be back soon with what happened next, including the shocking evidence we discovered that turned the entire case on its head. The days following our meeting with Detective Rivera were deceptively quiet. No calls from my mother or sister, no unexpected visitors, no social media drama. Jonathan warned me not to be lulled into a false sense of security. They're regrouping, he said during our morning check-in call. Probably consulting with Hoffman about their next move. He was right. The calm shattered 3 days later when I received an email from the HR department at Green Properties, the company Grandma and I had built together. The message was brief and devastating. The board of directors had called an emergency meeting and voted to place me on administrative leave pending an investigation into financial irregularities. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The company had only 5 board members, me, Grandma, my mother, and 2 longtime business associates, James Peterson and Vivian Carter. With me and Grandma effectively blocked from voting, Grandma due to her medical condition and me due to conflict of interest, my mother would have only needed to convince one other member to get the majority. I called James immediately. He had been Grandma's friend for 30 years and had always supported my role in the company. I'm sorry, Catherine, he said, sounding genuinely distressed. Elizabeth presented bank statements showing large transfers from the company accounts to your personal account. She had documentation, signatures, it looked legitimate. It's fabricated, James. You know I would never steal from the company. He sighed heavily. I want to believe you, but the evidence was compelling. And with your grandmother's condition deteriorating. Look, take the administrative leave. Clear your name. If you're innocent, the investigation will show that. If I'm innocent? I repeated, stung by his doubt. James, you've known me since I was a child. People change when money is involved, he replied quietly. I've seen it too many times. After hanging up, I immediately called Jonathan, who requested an emergency meeting with Detective Rivera. By afternoon, we were back in the detective's office, presenting evidence of the falsified bank statements my mother had created. These signatures don't match my clients', Jonathan pointed out, placing the fabricated documents next to legitimate ones. And the account number listed here isn't even Catherine's. We've brought her actual bank statements to verify. Detective Rivera examined both sets of documents carefully. This is concerning. If these were presented to the board as authentic, it could constitute fraud. That's exactly what happened, I confirmed. And now I've been removed from my position at the company my grandmother and I built together. The detective made notes, his expression grim. I'll need to expand my investigation to include these allegations. In the meantime, do you have a secure copy of all company records? Anything that would prove these transactions never occurred? I nodded. Our CFO, Marcus Daniels, maintains duplicate records. He's been with the company for 15 years and is extremely meticulous. I've already reached out to him. Good. I'll need to speak with him. Rivera paused, then added, Ms. Green, given the escalating nature of these accusations, I would advise you to take precautions. Your mother seems determined to discredit you by any means necessary. On the way back to Grandma's house, Jonathan was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. Catherine, we need to consider the possibility that this isn't just about the house. The lengths your mother is going to, falsifying documents, risking criminal charges herself, suggests there might be more at stake. I'd been thinking the same thing. The company is worth far more than the house. And I've been running the day-to-day operations for years, while Mom has been a silent partner at best. There's something else, Jonathan said hesitantly. Your grandmother has always been very private about her finances, even with me. But given these developments, I asked my paralegal to do a deep dive into all her holdings. He pulled out a folder and handed it to me. We found several offshore accounts and investments that aren't listed in any of the estate planning documents. Substantial amounts, Catherine. And they're all designated to transfer to you upon her death. I flipped through the pages, stunned by the figures. I had no idea. I believe your mother recently discovered these accounts. Possibly during her search for assets she could control. So this isn't about the house at all, I realized. It's about millions that Mom thought she'd inherit but are coming to me instead. And about control of the company, Jonathan added. By discrediting you professionally and personally, she potentially gains both. The revelation was both clarifying and heartbreaking. This wasn't just opportunistic greed triggered by Grandma's illness, it was a calculated plan that had probably been in development for years, waiting for the right moment. When I arrived home, Marcus was waiting for me. The CFO rarely made house calls, and his presence on Grandma's doorstep, clutching his laptop and looking nervously over his shoulder, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. I came as soon as I could, he said once we were inside. Catherine, it's worse than you think. He opened his laptop and showed me a series of transactions dating back 6 months, small at first, then increasingly large withdrawals from the company's main operating account. These are legitimate? I asked, scrolling through the list. Yes. Authorized by Elizabeth. She's been moving money systematically, using her signing authority as a board member. But where is it going? These transfers are to account numbers I don't recognize. Marcus looked grim. Shell companies. 3 of them, all registered in the past year. All listing Elizabeth Morrison and Melissa Green as principals. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. They've been siphoning money from the company while simultaneously setting me up to take the fall. It appears so. And there's more. He hesitated, then continued. 2 weeks ago, Elizabeth initiated paperwork to remove Eleanor as a signatory on all company accounts, citing her cognitive decline. The bank has been processing the request. My hands clenched into fists. They're systematically erasing Grandma from her own company while stealing from it. I prepared copies of everything, Marcus said, handing me a flash drive. I can't be seen taking sides publicly. I have a family to support, but this is wrong, Catherine. I won't stand by while they destroy what you and Eleanor built. That evening, I sat at Grandma's bedside, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware of the war being waged over her legacy. I felt a resolve hardening within me. This wasn't just about defending myself anymore, it was about justice. For Grandma, for the business she'd built, and for the truth. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for Monday morning at the Suffolk County Probate Court. Jonathan had prepared meticulously, organizing our evidence into a compelling narrative of exploitation and manipulation. We arrived early, expecting to see my mother and Melissa with their attorney, but the opposing side's table remained empty as the minutes ticked by. "This is unusual," Jonathan murmured, checking his watch. "Hoffman is known for being aggressive, not absent." Judge Patricia Donovan entered the courtroom at precisely 9 a.m., her expression stern as she noted the empty table. "Counsel for the respondents?" "Your Honor," Jonathan stood, "we haven't heard from opposing counsel this morning." The judge frowned. "Let's give them 15 minutes before proceeding." Those 15 minutes passed with no sign of my mother, sister, or their attorney. Finally, Judge Donovan's patience wore thin. "Mr. Winters, we'll proceed with your petition in their absence. Please present your case." Jonathan methodically presented our evidence: medical documentation of Grandma's condition, recordings of my mother and sister's manipulation attempts, financial records showing their suspicious activities, and statements from Grandma's doctors and caregivers supporting my role as her primary caretaker. Judge Donovan listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Jonathan played the recordings of my mother coaching Grandma to sign documents while clearly confused, the judge's expression darkened visibly. "These recordings are deeply troubling," she commented. "Has this evidence been shared with law enforcement?" "Yes, Your Honor." Detective Michael Rivera of the Boston Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit is currently investigating. As Jonathan concluded our presentation, the courtroom doors swung open, and Detective Rivera himself entered, approaching the bench with purposeful strides. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. I'm Detective Rivera. I believe the court should be aware of developments directly relevant to this case." The judge motioned him forward. "Proceed, Detective." This morning, we executed search warrants at the residences of Elizabeth Morrison and Melissa Green, as well as at the offices of Attorney Gerald Hoffman, in connection with an investigation into elder financial abuse and fraud. A murmur swept through the courtroom. I sat frozen, processing his words. During these searches, we discovered evidence of a broader conspiracy to defraud Eleanor Green and Green Properties. Elizabeth Morrison and Melissa Green were arrested approximately 1 hour ago on multiple charges, including elder abuse, wire fraud, and falsifying financial records. The courtroom fell silent. I felt lightheaded, as if the air had been sucked from the room. Additionally, Detective Rivera continued, we found evidence that Attorney Hoffman was actively participating in this scheme. He is also in custody and facing disbarment proceedings. Judge Donovan took a moment to absorb this information. "I see. Detective, would you be willing to share any evidence that might be pertinent to this guardianship matter?" "Yes, Your Honor. We recovered documents indicating a plan to have Catherine Green removed as her grandmother's caretaker, declared mentally unstable, and potentially institutionalized if necessary. There were also draft legal papers prepared to transfer all of Eleanor Green's assets to a trust controlled exclusively by Elizabeth Morrison." I felt Jonathan's steadying hand on my shoulder as the detective's words sank in. They hadn't just wanted to steal Grandma's legacy, they had been willing to destroy my life completely to do it. Judge Donovan turned to me, her expression softened slightly. "Ms. Green, this is obviously shocking information. Do you wish to proceed today, or would you prefer to reschedule?" I took a deep breath. "I'd like to proceed, Your Honor. My grandmother needs protection now more than ever." The judge nodded approvingly. Very well. Based on the evidence presented and the alarming developments reported by Detective Rivera, I am granting the petition for guardianship of Eleanor Green to Catherine Green, with Jonathan Winters serving as co-guardian for financial matters. She continued, her tone firm. Furthermore, I am issuing a protection order prohibiting Elizabeth Morrison and Melissa Green from contacting Eleanor Green or Catherine Green, or entering any properties owned by either of them. Mr. Winters, please prepare the appropriate documents for my signature by the end of the day. As we left the courtroom, Detective Rivera approached us. Ms. Green, we'll need to speak with you further about the company finances. The fraud appears extensive. I nodded numbly. Of course. Whatever you need. Jonathan drove me back to Grandma's house, both of us processing the morning's events in stunned silence. How had my mother and sister's scheme spiraled into criminal charges? What would happen to the company with both of them facing prison time? At home, I found Grandma sitting in her sunroom with Lucia, working on a puzzle. She looked up as I entered, her eyes clear and questioning. How did it go at court? She asked. I sat beside her, taking her hands in mine. The judge approved the guardianship, Grandma. I'll be taking care of you, with Jonathan overseeing the finances to make sure everything is transparent. She nodded, seemingly unsurprised. And Elizabeth? Melissa? I hesitated, unsure how much to share. Grandma squeezed my hands, her gaze sharpening. Catherine, I may forget what I had for breakfast, but I understand more than people think. Tell me the truth. Carefully, I explained what had happened, the arrests, the evidence of fraud, the protection order. Grandma listened silently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she closed her eyes briefly, then looked out at her garden. I always taught Elizabeth that actions have consequences, she said finally. It seems she'll be learning that lesson the hard way. I'm sorry, Grandma. I know this isn't what you wanted for your family. She turned back to me, surprising me with the clarity and determination in her eyes. This isn't your fault, Catherine. Their choices led to this outcome, not yours. Now, we have work to do to save the company. That afternoon, Marcus arrived with more detailed records of the financial fraud. The three of us, Grandma, Marcus, and I, sat at the dining room table reviewing the damage. The shell companies my mother had created had received nearly $2 million over the past 6 months. We can recover most of it, Marcus explained. The accounts have been frozen, and with the evidence from the police raid, we have a strong case for full restitution. Grandma studied the figures with renewed focus. The company will survive this. We've weathered worse. She looked at me meaningfully. But our family may not. As evening fell, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my mother's husband, Richard. Catherine, I don't know what to say. His voice sounded hollow, shocked. I had no idea what Elizabeth was doing. None of it. You didn't suspect anything? I asked, skeptical. I knew she was upset about your grandmother's will, but this, the fraud, the false accusations against you. I'm horrified. He paused. I've hired her an attorney, but I won't be posting bail. I can't be part of this. After we hung up, I sat on the porch swing, watching darkness settle over Grandma's garden. The house stood solid behind me, a testament to my grandmother's strength and vision. It had become the symbol of our family's worst betrayal, but perhaps it could also be the foundation for something new, something better. Detective Rivera had warned me that the case would take months to resolve, possibly years. The company would need rebuilding, Grandma's care would remain my priority, and the emotional wounds would take time to heal. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of possibility rather than dread. Justice, it seemed, was finally on our side. 1 year later, I stood in Grandma's garden, watching as the caterers set up tables for her 85th birthday celebration. The roses were in full bloom, their fragrance filling the air with memories of summers past. The house behind me, the house that had nearly torn our family apart, stood proud and beautiful, freshly painted and lovingly maintained. So much had changed in 12 months. My mother and sister had both pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full restitution to Green Properties. My mother was serving a 3-year sentence at a minimum security facility, while Melissa had received probation and community service due to her lesser role and cooperation with prosecutors. Gerald Hoffman had been disbarred and was facing his own prison sentence for multiple ethics violations uncovered during the investigation. As Detective Rivera had discovered, our case wasn't the first time he had helped clients exploit elderly relatives, just the first time he'd been caught. Green Properties had not only survived but thrived under the new management structure. With Grandma acting as advisor, I had taken over as CEO, implementing new financial controls and transparency measures. Marcus had been promoted to CFO, his loyalty rewarded with a partnership stake. The company's value had increased by 30%, and we were expanding into new markets. Most importantly, Grandma's health had stabilized. While her dementia hadn't improved, the stress of being manipulated had clearly been exacerbating her symptoms. In a peaceful environment, with consistent care and regular activities, she had regained some clarity and was having more good days than bad. As I adjusted a flower arrangement on one of the tables, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Everything looks beautiful, Catherine." I turned to see James Peterson, the board member who had initially voted to suspend me. He had apologized profusely when the truth came out, admitting that my mother had shown him falsified documents that appeared convincing. "Thank you for coming, James. It means a lot to Grandma." He nodded, looking around at the garden. "Eleanor always did know how to create something beautiful and lasting." He hesitated. "Have you heard from Elizabeth recently?" "She writes occasionally. Mostly to Grandma." I didn't add that my mother's letters were full of justifications and subtle blame-shifting, never quite taking full responsibility for her actions. "Melissa calls more often. She's in therapy, trying to understand why she went along with it all." James shook his head sadly. "Family dynamics can be so complicated." Speaking of which, he gestured toward the garden gate, where a hesitant figure stood. Richard, my mother's husband, was holding a large gift-wrapped package. After the arrests, he had filed for divorce, unable to reconcile the woman he thought he had married with the person capable of such calculated betrayal. "I wasn't sure I should come," he said as I approached. "But Eleanor was always kind to me, even after everything." "She'll be glad to see you," I assured him. "She doesn't hold you responsible." "And you?" he asked, searching my face. "Do you hold me responsible?" I considered the question. I think we all missed signs we should have seen. But no, I don't blame you for what they did. The party was small but joyful. Grandma's remaining friends, loyal business associates, caregivers who had become like family, and a few relatives who had distanced themselves during the legal battle but now sought reconnection. Grandma sat in her favorite garden chair, receiving guests with the grace and charm that had always defined her. When it came time for speeches, Jonathan stood first, raising his glass. To Eleanor Green, who taught us all about resilience, integrity, and the true meaning of family. And to Catherine, who embodies those same qualities and fought to protect not just a house or a company, but a legacy of values. Grandma squeezed my hand as everyone applauded. When the noise died down, she surprised us all by struggling to her feet, waving away my offer of assistance. "I may not remember everything these days," she began, her voice wavering but determined, "but I remember what matters. This house," she gestured to the Victorian mansion behind us, "was never just about bricks and mortar. It was about creating a home, a place of safety and love." She looked around at the gathered faces. Some of my family chose a different path. They saw objects and money, not the values these things represented. It's their loss, and my heartbreak. Her voice caught, but she continued. But today, I celebrate what remains. Catherine, who fought for what was right, not just what was hers. Friends who stood by us. A business that continues to grow. And lessons, hard ones, about what truly constitutes family. She raised her glass with a slightly trembling hand. To chosen family. To honesty. To justice. And to second chances. As the sun set over the garden, casting long shadows across the lawn, guests gradually departed until only Grandma and I remained, sitting together on the porch swing. "Are you happy with how things turned out?" I asked her, wrapping a light blanket around her shoulders against the evening chill. She considered the question, watching the last golden light fade from her beloved garden. Happy isn't the right word. At peace, perhaps. Justice was served. The company is thriving. This house will remain in caring hands. She turned to me, her eyes clear and direct. But I lost a daughter and a granddaughter in the process. They made their choices, Grandma. Yes, they did. As did you. She patted my hand. You chose integrity, even when it was painful. That's the true inheritance I wanted to leave, not money or property, but a moral compass that points true even in life's storms. We sat in comfortable silence as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The house behind us stood solid and enduring, its windows glowing with warm light, no longer a battleground but once again a home. Not a perfect home, one with history, with scars, with painful memories alongside the happy ones. But a home built on truth rather than lies, on justice rather than greed. And in the end, that was the legacy that mattered most. I hope my story resonates with some of you out there. Family betrayal is one of the deepest wounds we can experience, but it doesn't have to define us forever. Have you ever had to stand up for what's right against your own family? How did you find the strength? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story touched you or helped you feel less alone in your own family struggles, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming life's challenges. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.